welcome to Jerusalem Studio. A year has passed since a wave of violence plagued Israel with near daily Palestinian stabbing, shooting, and car-ramming attacks against Israelis. During today's program, we will look into the situation today and what is being done on all fronts to mitigate the phenomenon. With me to do so in the studio are Mr. Daniel Cohen, a research fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies. Welcome. I'd like also to welcome our TV7 analyst, Mr. Amir Oren, and Dr. Kobi Michael, a senior researcher at the Institute for National Security Studies as well. Welcome. Dr. Michael, when we're looking at the current situation, we've been reviewing various occurrences which has some kind of a linear concept to the resurgence of the ongoing violence, even though it's more specified right now of specific individuals trying to attack security forces in East Jerusalem and also limited to the West Bank, as opposed to previously when it was really all over Israel with near daily attacks. Now it's not near daily, but weekly attacks that we're seeing. How much of a grip does Israel have on this situation, and is there a specific cooperation with the Palestinian authorities to try and mitigate it?
First of all, I think that we have to take into account the idea that we are seeing only a partial picture, in the sense that we see the visible violence, okay, but we have to remember that there are hundreds of attacks that are prevented on a daily basis, okay, or weekly and monthly basis, most of them by the IDF and the General Security Services, and part of them by the Palestinian security apparatuses, and part of them by cooperation between both sides. So I think that the scale is much larger than we see. And actually we are talking about a phenomenon in a very wide scale. And I think that all of us are seeking to have the ultimate explanation to this phenomenon. And I'm not sure that we still have reached to the ultimate explanation, but I think that we are witnessing a phenomenon which is an outcome of very complicated combination of internal and external factors. And eventually, this is maybe a late, I would say, late demonstration of the so-called Arab Spring in the Palestinian arena. And I think that in this regard, Israel and the Palestinian Authority have a common strategic interest to assure that this phenomenon will remain contained, because it threats not only the Israeli interest, it threats, first of all, the Palestinian Authority stability.
Mr. Michaeli, Mr. Cohen, sorry, when we're looking at the situation, we can realize that the authorities, as Mr. Oren also specified and Dr. Michaeli has referred to, are not per se stimulated by the authorities, are not stringed by the authorities, more accurately, as it has been a flood of social media, the use of social platforms to try and stimulate younger people to try and perpetrate kind of various attacks with day-to-day tools, whether it's knives or axes or other tools. How can you see this phenomenon currently in the constellation of the situation?
From the Palestinian society side, we still see young guys, young girls take a knife after they were influenced by social media and go out and conduct these attacks. So we can't say it's so different on the Palestinian side. What we do see, Israeli government, Israeli parliament, and also Israeli security forces took it really seriously, this challenge of trying to stop incitement on social media. So we see more monitoring of Palestinian social media, more campaigns by Israeli side, more even an algorithm that were produced by units like A200 to try to identify, to try to predict, and in the end try to arrest people that have the intention to go out and conduct these attacks.
Just for the sake of our viewers, A200 specifically military intelligence.
Military intelligence, right? And also we see work against incitement online, against the guys that are influencing it, and they are, as you said, are not organized, are not part of the organization or from the Palestinian Authority. There are a lot of arrests in the last few months against incitement. The numbers last year were, you can count it by hand, like 5 times that people were arrested and pressed charges on it. Now we see the numbers go up, over 100 people were arrested on the influence and through incitement that we find that leads to terror attacks.
With regard to the motives, I intend to agree with Amir, but I would say that the proportionality, okay, with regard to the essence of the motive, I think differently than Amir. I think that most of it is not religious and not national. Most of it is very personal and very psychological, very societal, and very cultural.
Even though most attacks were concentrated during the high holidays, the Jewish high holidays, which basically brought about the wave of violence?
This belongs to the section of opportunities, okay? Because it is easier for them, or much easier for them, to reach their targets during such events or such dates. But I think that actually we are seeing the fragmentation process of the Palestinian society. And this is something that we have to be very concerned about, because actually there is an erosion process of the traditional authority mechanisms in the Palestinian Authority. It begins with the family, with the parents, and then it goes to the elders of the society, and then to the educational system, and it ends with the institutional system, which relates to the Palestinian Authority as such. And eventually we see that all of these 4 types or categories of authority are in erosion process, not from yesterday and not from a year ago. Actually, these are the last year of the last wave of violence and terrorism is an outcome or reflection of this erosion process that is for years, it's not only for the last year. And these are the outcome, these are the consequences of this erosion process. And actually, there are no restraining mechanisms in the Palestinian society. And when the young generation actually is inspired, on the one hand, from ISIS or religious inspiration on the one hand, which is encouraged by incitement, which is institutional incitement or other incitement. And on the other hand, there is an inspiration of the so-called Arab Spring, what is going there in the Arab streets, in the Arab world. And on the other hand, there is frustration, despair from the Palestinian Authority as such, even from Hamas as an alternative to the Palestinian Authority. And the economic situation, the societal situation is very harsh. And when this young generation is looking forward, they see nothing. They see only a sort of a very long, dark tunnel, okay? And when they have no option to fulfill their aspiration, and when they finish the college or the high school and they have nothing to do, and they see that all the support that they used to have from the Arab world, from the international community is not there anymore, because the Palestinian issue actually is not an issue.
Many variables, absolutely. What I want to try and identify is something that you talked about, the Arab Spring of 2011-12. Mr. Cohen, when we're talking about the Arab Spring, do you see a parallel between the Arab Spring surrounding the State of Israel, surrounding those areas, to what actually has happened during the past year of 2016-15, during which we saw more and more Palestinians taking up arms and committing various acts of violence?
As my English colleague said, it's oppression, depression. They are not able to tell their own voice.
But is there can we draw a line between the Arab Spring surrounding the State of Israel to what is happening in the Palestinian territories and in Israel?
The failure of the Arab Spring in most of the countries surrounding us it's the same mechanism. The failure of able of youngsters to tell their own voice or to set alternative to governments or depression and oppression from the authorities, like in the Palestinian territories. So it's much similar in that aspect. But I want to add that in this phenomenon of terror, I think it's more local, as it was said here before, because there's like a vicious circle of one member of the family commits a terror attack and then you see another one, or someone from the same school or from the same community.
Do you see those concerns that are also echoed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman and other individuals from the highest echelons of the Israeli government? Will they be able to contain such a situation in such a volatile time?
I hope that yes. I think that they intend to. They understand the sensitivity and they understand what might be the consequences. We have to remember that this was one of the main triggers to the beginning of the current wave of violence and terrorism. All the incitement and all the rumors about what are the Israeli intentions with regard to the Haram Sharif, okay, with regard to Al-Aqsa Mosque. But the problem is that there are two parties at least to this tango, okay, and the Palestinian Authority is part of that. And actually there are more than two parties to this tango because the Israeli Northern Islamic Movement is another party to this tango, and Jordan is another party to this tango. I think that Jordan, Israel will be very responsible in this regard. I hope that the Palestinian Authority will be responsible in this regard and will not contribute its incitement. And I hope that the Northern Islamic movement here in Israel will not contribute its negative contribution. It's very sensitive and actually it's very explosive. And I hope that everybody understands that mainly and especially these days, okay, the Jewish holidays, will not be a good reason for another explosion or another, I would say, escalation of deterioration in the current situation. But with your permission, I would like to add just one sentence.
Please, very short.
Yes, to the things that have been said by Amir before. It's the idea about the similarities, okay? The idea of loss of fear, okay? Actually, the Arab society stopped to fear from the authorities. And I think that if we are looking for the very beginning for this syndrome, it will be the American invasion to Iraq in 2003, when actually Saddam Hussein was taken from his position.
Interesting. Mr. Cohen, when we're talking about this period of time, of course, social media is a big factor to this. And I've been following Arab media lately and looking at various reports on the Arab media. And in many instances, they have vocalized the fact that Jews are coming to the Islamic holy places and calling for Muslims to gather together and stand in front of this phenomenon, which they define as a threatening phenomenon to the Muslims in general, but the religion Islam in particular. How can Israel deal with so much or with a situation in which social media is not containable? You can't put a grip on it. How can Israel deal with that?
First of all, we see Israel fighting social media platforms like Facebook. It started in the parliament with new laws that will regulate or mandate Facebook in Israel not to show incitement online, for example. We see the fight against ISIS as a good example of when the companies decide, the Silicon Valley decides that it's going to fight counter messaging by groups like ISIS. It is very successive by taking off accounts, removing them, and even reporting it to authorities. We don't do the same in the unique Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And we don't see it also by the non-presence of Israel in the Arab media world. We have one major general that speaks a lot from the IDF that we see him in Al Jazeera and other places, but you don't see enough Israeli voices that can speak loud and clear and say that Israel has no intention to do so and go against this phenomena. Maybe there's a new opportunities now in the fight against ISIS and the fight between the Sunni and the Shia, that maybe we will see more voices that will be stronger enough to speak about these very sensitive issues, and that Israel has no intention to do so. But if we have more presence on Arab media, maybe we'll see a change.
Dr. Michael?
I think that eventually most of the factions that are fighting in Syria, okay, they have no time, no efforts, and no capacities or capabilities to influence the Palestinian arena. I'm not sure that the Palestinian arena is in the top of their interest. Okay, they are so occupied and busy about their survival in Syria, and actually their main or their top aim is first of all to remove the Assad regime and to remain in life. So I'm not sure that they actually have a sort of influence, and even Hezbollah, which is a much bigger organization and with much more capacities and capabilities, also a semi-state entity. They try to intervene not only in the Palestinian arena in the West Bank, but also in the Palestinian arena inside the state of Israel, in order to escalate, in order to deteriorate, in order to incite, and etc. But it's very marginal. I don't think that it's something which is very influential, and eventually it will remain in the hands of the Israelis and the Palestinians themselves.
Mr. Cohen?
As Islamic State last year had many campaigns trying to provoke and to fuel the fire into the conflict we have here. We saw 10 videos, some of them even in Hebrew, calling to the Palestinian society to take action. And they even were criticism against Hamas and against the other movements in the Palestinian society. Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, since they left in July, Al-Qaeda, they're now focusing locally, focusing in the fights they have in Khaleb and in other places in Syria, and they don't have
Well, they technically they didn't leave Al-Qaeda. They're still part of Jabhat al-Nusra and the other organizations. It just merged with rebel groups.
They're trying to get now the attention of the West,
Right.
and less to try to aim about strategies of Al-Qaeda, and to do so they need to leave behind now the fight against Israel.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have very much time left. So in one sentence, how do you see the situation in the next few weeks?
I think that it will be more of the same, at least as long as the current context will remain the same context, meaning that we are in a political stalemate with regard to the Palestinians, when there is no political will in the Israeli side, or even maybe political capacity, I would say, to do something which is dramatic or a game changer. And as long as the Palestinian Authority will remain in its same capacities. But if there is something that we have to be worried about, is the Gaza Strip and Hamas, because the situation in Gaza Strip might deteriorate in a very serious manner, and Hamas has intentions about the Palestinian Authority and about the West Bank, and they are trying to do and to undermine the Palestinian Authority.
Mr. Cohen, one sentence?
We need to do whatever we can that the Palestinian Authority won't collapse in the couple next years that we have. This is the main challenge.